Check test 2. Andy. Steve. What was that? It was like a song from the 70s, wasn't it?
All right, fellas.
Okay. I mean, I probably should test those, but I don't think I'm going to leave everything off. Yeah, sorry, I've got all my turnarounds making this thing happen. And, which one?
Hey Rob, do you know what these 2 chairs are for?
Um,
Oh, are they for the pop timer people?
maybe.
Okay.
Andy's on it. No, you don't remember the password, do you?
Hey Nikki.
The other one. If you're gonna go, where were you again?
All mine are expired.
Okay, so where's the water?
I used to have like a
I got it.
they would always come, so I just wanted to finish. I figured it never seems
Yeah,
but they're
you can sign it, you can sign it.
No, I understand. This one I think I only activate for events. Hey, Craig, it's Andy again. Hey, is Mickey available again? She's still on the phone. Bummer. Is Annette there? Is she available? Yeah, if that's all right. Or she can. That'd be perfect. All right, thanks.
It may have outlets in various places, but they're closing a lot. I don't think they're hot.
Hey.
Sure. Okay, anytime we're ready, we can.
It's a confidence monitor. You're going to be able to see what's on the screen, but you can also turn right around and it is
And I'll sit with Nick here. No, they will be here. They will be here just. In fact, we can deactivate a couple hours.
How you doing? I'm Rob Massey.
Nice to meet you.
This is your mic. We'll get you put on whenever you want to go. It just I'm pretty close right now, so just let us have to for your work.
Okay.
So whenever you want to do that, that's fine.
Might just keep that on the table.
You probably want to. Well, you could pin it right there. And,
Oh, yeah, I mean, this I'll
yeah,
pin
yeah,
this
sure. Yeah, sure. So wherever you're comfortable with it, it's fine.
Okay,
All
thanks.
good.
Okay, great.
Hey, Mike, here. All right.
Yeah.
gets in the shot.
So the
But
thing
if
that we want is like a couple chairs.
Yeah, maybe.
Right behind here, and that way members can ask questions and not kneel.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
We've got your microphone here. I mean, we've got some time, so. And then,
Okay, you just want me to say a few words? Very nice.
Good work.
Good work. Are we okay? Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Testing 1, 2. Senator Gaines' microphone 1, 2, 1, 2. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sound checks. Testing. Got a good sound? Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. I'll stay away from it. Good. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank
Good.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Safety and Security for our 8th hearing titled Pipeline Safety, State and Local Perspectives. First, I would like to thank Senator Daines for hosting this field hearing in his home state of Montana. We are pleased to be here at Montana State University in beautiful Big Sky country. I also want to thank Senator John Tester for joining the committee today. He and I have shared a strong working relationship, particularly on issues related to transportation policy, and I look forward to working closely with both of you as we move forward on this pipeline safety reauthorization and other important pieces of legislation. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the newly confirmed Pipeline Safety and Hazardous Materials Administrator, Marie-Therese Dominguez. I was pleased to strongly support Administrator Dominguez's nomination in the committee and on the floor, and I look forward to hearing more from her today. Today's hearing will examine the importance of pipeline safety, particularly as it relates to rural areas. According to FSMA, more than 2.5 million miles of pipelines cross through the United States. 500,000 miles of pipeline transports natural gas, oil, and hazardous materials to critical infrastructure, including power plants, military bases, airports, or treatment facilities. Pipelines transport approximately 75% of our nation's crude oil and 60% of our refined petroleum products. Accidents related to pipeline safety are often tremendous disasters that pose harm to the public and our sensitive natural resources. As many of you know, in 2011, a corroded pipeline spilled 63,000 gallons of crude oil into the Yellowstone River in Laurel, Montana. I understand that's not far from here. In 2010, a natural gas pipeline exploded in San Bruno, California, killing 8 people, injuring 60 people, and destroying 37 homes. This year, in Glendive, Montana, the Poplar pipeline spilled nearly 30,000 gallons of crude oil into the Yellowstone River. Most officials and experts cite these events as among the worst pipeline accidents in recent history. In order to protect the safety and natural resources of Nebraskans, Montanans, and all Americans, Congress must maintain robust oversight of PHMSA activities. State and federal officials must also ensure that pipelines across the country can continue operating efficiently. After all, pipelines are renowned as the safest way to transport crude oil and natural gas. As we look forward to PHMSA reauthorization, I'm eager to work closely with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, as well as PHMSA and industry stakeholders. Together, we can establish a bipartisan, pro-safety reauthorization bill that strengthens our nation's pipeline network. To begin, I'm looking forward to hearing more about PHMSA's work to fulfill the agency's outstanding mandates from the previous reauthorization. In the 2011 PHMSA reauthorization, PHMSA received over 40 new mandates. To date, they have completed well over 50% of its mandates, but still have a significant amount to accomplish. I also look forward to working with Administrator Dominguez to reprioritize the agency's important work in our reauthorization legislation. With regard to staffing, I understand the agency is experiencing challenges competing with the private sector for highly skilled labor. I would like to explore the ways in which PHMSA and Congress can work together to accelerate its hiring of field inspectors and analytical experts. In addition, I hope to learn more about PHMSA's work with industry stakeholders on the agency's risk-based integrity management assessment programs and pipeline inspection requirements, particularly as it relates to high-consequence areas. In January 2015, National Transportation Safety Board report found that PHMSA's integrity management program's complex requirements often make compliance challenging for pipeline operators. In its quantitative analysis, NTSB found that Although the integrity management program has kept material failures on pipelines low, there is no evidence that the overall occurrence of gas transmission pipeline incidents have declined. In addition, PHMSA's inspections criteria should be reviewed. Currently, pipeline operators must inspect pipelines every 7 years. In some instances, PHMSA's inspection requirements may be too little, while in others, too frequent. I hope to work with PHMSA to re-examine best practices to improve pipeline inspection and data collection requirements. Finally, I would like to hear from PHMSA and all the stakeholders on the importance of providing up-to-date and more accurate information for pipeline operators and policymakers. PHMSA should better educate stakeholders and the public, particularly when it comes to high-consequence areas, including river crossings, drinking water aquifers, environmentally delicate regions, and population centers. Again, thank you all for being here today. Together, I'm certain we can achieve a bipartisan, pro-safety reauthorization to ensure the stability, efficiency, and safety of our nation's vast network of pipeline infrastructure. I would now like to invite Senator Daines to offer opening remarks.
Chairman Fisher, thank you for traveling to Montana to chair this subcommittee hearing. We often hear about the urban-rural divide, how what works for folks in New York City or San Francisco doesn't necessarily work here in Montana. Chairman Fisher, I know you come from a ranch family, have a cow-calf operation there in small town Nebraska, so I know you feel right at home here in our way of life here in Montana. Similarly, many of the hearings held in D.C. are focused primarily on urban issues, and too often the rural voice of America goes unheard, and that's why field hearings like this are so important. And I truly appreciate having a colleague, a chairman from Nebraska who comes from and understands rural America. Thank you for requesting with me this hearing in Montana and facilitating our rural voices being heard. On that same note, I'd like to thank Committee Chairman John Thune and Ranking Member Bill Nelson for scheduling our request for this hearing. If you take a look at the makeup of the Commerce Committee today in the U.S. Senate, there is a strong showing of western and rural states. We have a great team that does understand rural issues. Senator Tester, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate that we've been able to work together on these issues, including introducing an appropriations amendment addressing pipeline river crossings, and for that I thank you. I also know Congressman Ryan Zinke also wanted to be here to put a statement for the record. However, the House is in session today, they're voting today, and I want to thank him for his support for constructing pipelines that promote job creation and energy independence and safety. He's also a good partner to work with. Chairman Fisher, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to have Congressman Zinke's written statement entered into the record.
Without objection.
Chancellor Mark Nook and his team here at MSU Billings, thank you for hosting this field hearing and providing this excellent facility. This is a place that my mom attended many, many years ago. Your staff has been a pleasure to work with, including providing great AV support, and as we all know, you're usually only as good as your AV support. I thank you for that. I have a little different background, perhaps, than many in Congress. I spent 28 years in the private sector after graduating from Montana State University, Bozeman, as a chemical engineer. In fact, I think I'm the only chemical engineer in Congress. Don't hold that against me. I know many other great engineers get their start right here in the Montana State University system. Many of these engineers have gone on to design, construct, operate, and inspect the pipeline infrastructures that we are here to discuss today. Earlier this week, we had a biannual Montana High-Tech Job Summit in Bozeman. We had bright students with unparalleled work ethic, matched with access to the great landscapes and quality of life we have here in Montana and our abundant natural resources, which has made Montana an attractive place for high-tech jobs. This unique environment has enabled Montanans to lead in innovation and play an instrumental role, an important role in increasing the safety and efficiency of our infrastructure. Technology has also allowed our pipelines to become more advanced, to become safer, to become more efficient. I'm looking forward to exploring these gains during today's meeting. Thanks also to our witnesses. I appreciate you joining us in Billings today and testifying on this very important issue. I first want to recognize our two Montana witnesses, Yellowstone County Commissioner Oslin, Billings, Ms. Slider from Edgar, Montana. Commissioner, thank you for your 12 years of public service. Ms. Slider, I appreciate having another Montana engineer at the table. Environmental engineer just sounds better than chemical engineer, so congratulations. Although you had to study all the same topics. I look forward to hearing from both of you about your professional experiences working with and around the pipelines of our state. Thanks for the work that you do for the people of Montana and for being here speaking up for our state. Ms. Dominguez, welcome to Montana. It's a pleasure seeing you here again. I understand this is your first testimony since your confirmation of PHMSA as a PHMSA administrator. Thank you for accepting the invitation and joining us today to discuss safety, discuss jobs, and PHMSA's role right here in Montana. I hope you have a little extra time to enjoy some of our great beauty. Mr. Denton, thank you for traveling to Montana to provide the perspective as a pipeline operator here in Montana. So I'm grateful we have Montanans at the table here today with both industry leaders and folks from Washington to ensure that the Montana voice is heard. We need Washington to look a little more like Montana, and that's best accomplished when we have decision makers come to the states to listen as well as to learn. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, also known as PHMSA, plays a very important role here in Montana and is vital to ensuring the safe and environmentally sound transportation of our natural resources. PHMSA's jurisdiction covers approximately 2.6 million miles of pipeline across our nation, nearly 19,000 miles here in Montana alone. This infrastructure, along with highways, railroads, airports, is an economic bloodline for our state. Because Montana produces approximately 30 million barrels of crude oil, 63 billion cubic feet of gas, and 42 million short tons of coal annually. And we export 60% of this energy. The oil and gas industries directly employ 7,500 Montanans, 862 just in pipeline construction. In total, it supports the employment of over 43,000 Montanans. In fact, 6.7% of Montana's total employment. In Montana, we know firsthand the potential that exists from investing in more energy infrastructure. The Keystone Pipeline alone would create an additional 4,000 jobs nationwide and approximately 800 jobs for us right here in Montana. That would double the current number of pipeline construction jobs in Montana alone. The oil and gas industries contribute $4.5 billion to our economy. That's over 10% of Montana's economic activity. These are good-paying jobs. Because our average salary in Montana is just under $40,000. The average oil and gas industry salary in Montana is over double that at $81,000. Additionally, Montana's oil and gas industries provide nearly $500 million in state and local tax revenues. That's helping support our schools, our teacher, and our infrastructures. And pipelines alone paid $72 million in property taxes to the state of Montana just last year. During my preparation for this hearing, it was impossible not to reflect on this year's and the 2011's pipeline releases into the Yellowstone River. Speaking as someone who just fished the Yellowstone River 2 weeks ago, I'm grateful for the efforts of both industry and the government to quickly respond, to clean up the spills, investigate what went wrong, and institute measures to improve safety and prevent recurrence. By finding out what went wrong in these incidents, we can implement some common sense reforms to prevent similar occurrences in the future. One of the challenges we've discussed and we'll explore more today around PHMSA's hiring practices is the lack of pipeline inspectors in Montana. I want to thank you, Administrator, for working to hire a second pipeline inspector in Montana. I'm excited to discuss this new position earlier this month with you and appreciate PHMSA's taking steps to ensure resources are available to ensure the continued inspection of Montana's pipelines. Thank you. Pipelines remain the safest way of transporting liquid and gas resources. According to a recent study, pipelines are up to 40 times safer than on our roads. It's imperative to our state that these energy products continue to be moved safely, to be moved efficiently. Congress plays an important role in the oversight of this infrastructure and PHMSA. With PHMSA's authorization expiring, I'll be working closely with the Senate Commerce Committee on legislation to reauthorize PHMSA. Your experiences, your ideas for improvement is critical as we begin drafting this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daines. Next, it is my great pleasure to welcome my friend Senator Tester from the great state of Montana, and I invite him to give testimony before the committee.
Well, thank you, Chairman Fisher, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this hearing. I appreciate you making the his leadership on pipeline issues. Senator James, we have worked together in the past, and I look forward to working together in the future to across the nation, particularly in the great state of Montana. I also want to thank the folks in the second panel testimony, or third panel, however you want to read this, your testimony. I think it is critically important when we talk about pipeline safety that we get as many players as possible to the table to talk about what the challenges are and how we can work. We know this all too well in Montana. We've experienced two major spills, as have been pointed out previously. The Yellowstone River, first spill was back in 2011, when an ExxonMobil pipeline run through 63,000 gallons went in the river about 20 miles upstream from here. At the time, the river was flooding out of its banks, and that oil extended downstream some 70 miles from the spill site. And in January of this year, a pipeline ruptured near Glendive, spilling about 30,000 gallons of oil into the Yellowstone River, shutting down Glendive's water system for a relatively short period of time for the spill. In a recent report to Congress, PHMSA found that erosion created exposed pipelines. And that was a factor in at least 16 significant incidents between 1991 and 2012, including the Laurel spill that I spoke of that happened in July of 2011. We need to do more to address the unique challenges of river crossings. Fast-moving water and erosion can change the characteristics of rivers rapidly, exposing these pipelines and making them susceptible to rupture. Given the importance of safeguarding our waterways, I really need to know whether we're doing enough to monitor the spill response plans of pipeline owners and operators. It's important that we hold PHMSA to the highest standards, but ultimately the owners and operators of these pipelines need to be an important part of the equation when it comes to maintenance, upgrades, to ensure that spills that, by the way, make nobody any money happen rarely. We must also make sure that our first responders in the communities have the appropriate information to do their jobs and manage the risks and responses. And I hope Commissioner Asa can speak to that. I also need more information about real-time monitoring during flood events, and if PHMSA utilizes river data from other agencies like the USGS. Today, I expect PHMSA will communicate about their efforts to bring new pipeline inspectors on board, so we applaud those efforts. In 2014, we supported an effort to greatly expand the number of inspectors in PHMSA's Pipeline Safety Division. More inspectors will allow the agency to prevent future incidents. That's going to save money. That's going to help everybody be more profitable. I know hiring and training a new workforce can be extremely difficult. And I look forward to the progress update on the hiring process and how Congress can continue to help you do your job, Administrator. Montana has a tremendous workforce, and we've got great schools to train folks. I look forward to working with you, Administrator Dominguez, to see how the agency can partner with people in our state, including this university, to get good people on the ground, keeping an eye on our infrastructure. As this hearing unfolds, I hope we will address what we learned from the previous two spills, what can be used on future spills. I hope we'll address if oversight on older pipelines is greater or less. The chairman talked about every 7 years the pipelines need to be inspected. Sometimes that's too long, sometimes that's too less. She is absolutely correct. We need to talk about river crossings. What happens in flood events? We need to find out if our partners are working with us and we're working with them. Critically important. And communication. And the communication not only between oil and gas companies and pipeline companies, but also our local governments, commissioners. Very, very important. And in the case of a spill, who's driving the bus? Who is the lead agency? Who do we go to find out if things are going the right direction? Look, Montana is a great place to live. I hope, Madam Chair, that Senator Daines has the opportunity to take you out in Yellowstone, maybe fishing, bow hunting season's on. But the fact is, you're probably like us, you're probably gone this afternoon, and that's unfortunate because we do have a great state. We like to think it's better than Nebraska. You may have a different opinion. But we must do everything we can to make sure that we have energy that's dependable, predictable, affordable, safe, and does the things for our economy to allow our outdoor industry to be able to flourish. Some $6 billion and 64,000 jobs in that industry also. So I'm committed to work with Administrator Dominguez, Senator Daines, and you, Madam Chair, to make sure that our kids inherit the best world that we can give them. Thank you very, very much for this opportunity to testify. I will be reading what do they call it?
Transcript.
The transcript, that's it, the transcript. And finally, and least but not least, thank you all for being here. I think it shows the importance of this issue to the people of the state of Montana. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tester. We are all so fortunate to live in the states that we do live in. They're beautiful states. The people are wonderful, and it is a pleasure to be here in Montana. Thank you, sir, for being here. At this time, I would ask that our panel please come forward. Welcome and thank you all for being here. We are so fortunate today to have 4 really great panel members that are going to offer us testimony and then respond to questions. We will begin with Marie-Therese Dominguez. She is the administrator of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. PHMSA's mission is to protect people and the environment from the risks inherent in transportation of hazardous materials by pipeline and other modes of transportation. Ms. Dominguez most recently served as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. As Principal Deputy, she provided policy direction and performance oversight for the Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works programs focused on water resources conservation and development, navigation, flood control, hydroelectric power generation, and outdoor recreation. Welcome, and we would look forward now to your testimony.
Chairwoman Fisher, Senator Daines, thank you very much for inviting me to testify about the reauthorization of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, otherwise known as PHMSA. Our program oversees the safe transportation of hazardous materials through the nation's 2.6 million miles of energy pipelines. I'd also like to thank Senator Tester and Senator Daines for welcoming me very humbly to the state of Montana. I'm always happy to visit Big Sky Country, and you served up some beautiful weather, so thank you very much. I want to express my gratitude to both of you for confirming my nomination in August. 2 months ago, I testified before you as the nominee for PHMSA Administrator, and thanks to your support, I'm honored to testify before you now as the Administrator to discuss our strategy for enhancing pipeline safety amid rapid industry growth. When I last testified before you, I told you my goal was to make PHMSA synonymous with safety, trust, and innovation. Safety is our mission, and it's at the heart and at the core of everything that we do. To achieve this mission, we need a strong foundation of trust with our partners in the states, the regulated industry, Congress, and above all, with the American people. And to be an effective regulatory and enforcement agency amid rapid change, we must be innovative. Since my confirmation, we have undertaken a number of initiatives to advance our safety mission and culture of trust and ensure that the agency is structured for the future. To that end, I was notified this morning that the Office of Management and Budget has completed their review of PHMSA's proposed rule on hazardous liquid pipelines, which we have had pending, and they're preparing for notice of publication in the Federal Register sometime hopefully in the next week or so. The proposed regulations will result in critical safety improvements and we hope that they will spark a robust dialogue moving forward about pipeline safety in the United States. More broadly, I've initiated an organizational assessment of PHMSA. Through this assessment, we will work to optimize our regulations, enforcement authority, and internal processes to ensure that PHMSA is structured to be responsive and drive innovation that enhances our safety mission. In addition, PHMSA is the first U.S. DOT modal administration to develop and begin implementing an Agency Safety Action Plan, or ASAP. The ASAP is led by the Secretary of Transportation, and it's a really important effort across the department to proactively identify ways we can improve safety. It's really asking the question, how can we better leverage our current authorities and our capabilities to improve safety? As part of the Agency Safety Action Plan, PHMSA is seeking ways to assist with and incentivize high performance among our state partners. And we look forward to working with the Congress to make our state partners as effective as possible. Montana is one example of PHMSA's strong coordination with state partners, which is ever more important as the industry expands. The recent spills in Montana are unacceptable, and they underscore the importance of PHMSA's safety mission and the need to work with our state and industry partners to push for improvements that mitigate risk and prevent future incidents. PHMSA continues to investigate January's Bridger pipeline oil spill. After launching a comprehensive investigation, PHMSA issued a corrective action order to that operator. In late April, Bridger received approval from PHMSA to replace its pipeline with a new horizontal directional drilled pipeline crossing and allowing it to resume service. We will pursue additional enforcement actions if it is determined that the operator violated any federal pipeline regulations. In the wake of the Bridger spill and the 2011 ExxonMobil spill, PHMSA has been working closely with the Montana government and pipeline operators to ensure necessary steps are taken to safeguard pipeline water crossings. These efforts are yielding measurable results for Montana. Since mid-2011, 17 pipeline crossings of major rivers have been replaced with HDD pipelines. Of the 64 major river crossings in Montana, 41 are now directionally drilled. There's more work to do. Thanks to resources provided by Congress, PHMSA is growing by 25%. Hiring and training federal and state inspectors is of the utmost importance as we expand our workforce. We are committed to strategically using the resources that Congress has granted us to invest in our inspection and enforcement capabilities, work to stay ahead of industry trends, strengthen our partnerships, and ensure the highest safety standards. I look forward to working with you as PHMSA leads the way in driving our state partners and industry toward a pipeline network that is known for safety, trust, and innovation.
Thank you, Administrator. Next, I would like to welcome Todd Denton. He is president of Phillips 66 Pipeline, LLC, where he is responsible for the operation of approximately 11,000 miles of crude oil, refined products, and NGL pipelines. He has 24 years' experience in the industry, beginning his career as a project engineer for Diamond Shamrock. He later moved into engineering management positions with UDS and Valero LP, and he has been in operations management for the past 8 years. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you having me. I'm Todd Denton, president of Phillips 66 Pipeline, LLC. We're members of the Association of Oil Pipelines and the American Petroleum Institute. So today I'll share with you examples of our pipeline safety efforts, as well as industry. A wholly owned subsidiary of Phillips 66 operates, as you mentioned, more than 11,000 miles of pipelines in the United States and 1,500 miles of pipelines here in Montana. 2011, on the Yellowstone River and the Missouri River Basin as well, will heighten awareness for Phillips 66 and others in the pipeline industry. As a result, we added a large-scale effort to our already robust integrity management program in our billings division to survey over 400 crossings to verify the depth of cover, identify those prone to erosion and water channel changes, identify and assess hundreds of potential land movement features that could impact our pipelines, and develop metrics to prioritize higher-risk areas based on factors such as depth of cover, channel migration and scour potential, impact from debris, land movement, and potential consequences. We then use the data gathered to select and execute permanent mitigation strategies such as new horizontal directional drills, or HDDs, new trench crossings targeting double potential scour depth, bank stabilization, and pipeline relocations. We also operate a real-time monitoring program for flood events that includes proactive snow level and precipitation monitoring, and USGS real-time data for stream flow, which includes 40 live flow stations. These efforts do not come cheaply. The Billings Division alone plans to spend nearly $120 million on approximately 100 projects from 2012 through 2017. This program has been successful in part due to the cooperation of many stakeholders and government agencies, including PHMSA, the Montana Governor's Office, multiple state, county, and local agencies, the tribal nations, and many landowners. While I speak for Phillips 66 Pipeline, we are not alone in these efforts within our industry. Other operators in Montana and throughout the United States are undertaking their own river crossing programs. In addition, leaders of the liquids pipeline industry added the strategic initiative just this year to update industry-wide river crossing guidance. This strategic initiative will significantly update and expand American Petroleum Institute Recommended Practice 1133 to focus intensely on the surveying, evaluation criteria, mitigation strategies, and monitoring of existing river crossings. I will personally serve as the executive champion for this effort, overseeing its development and ensuring it receives the attention it deserves across the industry. As a Montana conservation group, Montanans for Healthy Rivers has said, quote, "It is no exaggeration to call rivers the lifeblood of Montana. They provide us with drinking water, irrigation water, water for industry, and boundless recreational opportunities. The history of Montana is the history of its rivers, and so will be its future," end quote. The future of Phillips 66 Pipeline in Montana is care and stewardship of the rivers and lands that we cross. Phillips 66 Pipeline and the entire liquids pipeline industry are committed to a goal of zero incidents and a safety performance strategic plan that includes improvements in technology, risk management, safety culture, management practices, and response capabilities. Thank you for your invitation to testify today, and look forward to answering any questions you have. And Senator, with your permission, I believe we have a 2-minute video that explains some of our river crossing program that we can share with you.
Okay.
We've got up here in the Rockies region literally hundreds of river crossings and several pipeline systems. In 2011, we had some very significant flooding that actually resulted in another operator losing a pipeline in the Yellowstone River. So we already had an active program, but when that happened, we stepped back and said, do we have a proactive enough program?
What we found when we did our initial assessments was that we have about 100 crossings that needed some kind of work. And for each one of those crossings, we've developed a long-term plan to lower our risk and make sure that our pipelines are safe
be a good neighbor wherever we operate. We have a great safety record keeping our contractors and employees safe, but we've also got a great record keeping the environment and the public safe. So this is just one piece of a very large integrity program.
Thank you, Mr. Denton. Next, I'd like to welcome Commissioner John Oslin. He is serving his third term as Yellowstone County Commissioner for District 1, which has jurisdiction over parts of Billings and Lockwood, Montana. He was first elected to the three-member commission in 2002, and prior to that position, Mr. Oslin headed the Yellowstone County Road Department. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Fisher and Senator Daines. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Pipeline safety and protecting our environment is our #1 priority in Yellowstone County. However, with that said, the 3 refineries and their associated incoming crude lines and outbound gas and diesel distribution lines provide enormous employment opportunities with high-paying jobs, a stable tax base for our roads, bridges, schools, and public safety. In 2011, Yellowstone County awoke to a broken pipeline spilling crude into an already flooding Yellowstone River. The disaster tested our ability to manage a quick response to stop the flow, capture as much of the released oil as possible, and start the process of an enormous cleanup project. I came away from that 2011 Yellowstone River spill with a new appreciation of how the federal EPA, state DEQ, Exxon's team of professionals, and local elected officials faced with a serious environmental challenge can work together to evaluate the cause, launch an immediate cleanup, work through the summer to end up with a finished product that we're all proud of. Many lessons were learned from the spill. Old and new pipeline crossings, river pipeline crossings, have been bored much deeper under our free-flowing rivers and streams. New check valves have been added, along with additional monitoring equipment to prevent future problems. While no system is flawless, pipelines have the best safety record for transporting oil and gas and are the most efficient way to deliver both crude oil and the finished products. Our refineries provide a stable economic base, great opportunities for employment, a stable tax base, and are one of the reasons that our county has remained fairly recession-proof when other parts of the nation have suffered major periods of economic decline. While it is very important to set our goals for pipeline safety high and expect 100% compliance of all of the rules and regulations, I would ask that we be careful not to overregulate any industry. Our federal government has a history of making the process so complicated and lengthy that projects like our Northeast Highway bypass, already 15 years in the planning just this year, received the record of decision, allowing us to take the next steps to move the process forward. Just imagine the cost increases when it takes 20 years to move a project from concept to completion. Everyone wants a clean and healthful environment. However, we must find a way moving forward to ensure that the process does not become the problem. Our taxpayers foot the bill for study after study that causes delay after delay. Common sense should tell us that we can effectively regulate business without grinding that business to a halt. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Michelle Slider, and she is currently the director, or with the Department of Transportation Compliance Manager, correct? In pipelines and terminals at CHS located in Billings, Montana. She has experience serving on committees and councils such as the CERC Oil and Gas Industry, the Montana CGA Committee, the Montana Utility Coordinating Council, and the Montana Liquid and Gas Pipeline Association. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Fisher, Senator Daines, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Michelle Slider, and I'm here to testify today on behalf of the Montana Liquid and Gas Pipeline Association, commonly known as the MLGPA, which is comprised of the 30 major pipeline operators in Montana. Through this testimony, I will share with you the specific approaches the MLGPA has implemented across the state of Montana, including many that go above and beyond the federal regulatory requirements in regards to public requirements, but leaves the methods of outreach up to the individual pipeline operators. The following testimony identifies the methods utilized by the MLGPA to address public awareness program requirements. Per federal regulation, emergency responders and public officials must be engaged on an annual basis for emergency responders and on a 3-year interval for public officials. The MLGPA meets or exceeds these requirements by providing direct mail to both audiences on an annual basis via membership with the Pipeline Association for Public Awareness. In addition to that baseline training and messaging, the MLGPA provides emergency responders with interactive pipeline emergency response training scenarios, emergency contact directories for pipeline operator information, capabilities assessments and reports, and identified site and emergency planning applications, and interoperable response procedures that can be modified to meet local requirements. In 2007, the MLGPA also began hosting more than 20 face-to-face meetings annually with emergency responders and public officials across the state. Through these meetings, the MLGPA members meet with an average of 600 stakeholders annually. This outreach is performed by the members and not contractors, and is crucial to establishing the relationships necessary to ensure effective response and teamwork in the event of a pipeline release. These relationships have been built and maintained over many years by the MLGPA's commitment to meeting the expectations of a predominantly volunteer emergency responder audience. This has been achieved by securing continuing education credits for the peace officers and emergency medical services, and modifying the presentation approach on an ongoing basis. For example, the original presentations contained the baseline messaging as required by PHMSA, but resulted in minimal engagement of the audience due to the volume of material being presented. We've modified those presentations now to the current meeting format, which includes site-specific scenarios in a local tabletop exercise format and local case studies that allow emergency responders to learn from real-world events. The MLGPA also accommodates volunteer participation by rotating the location and timing of the events to coincide with regular fire department meetings in rural locations. In 2008, the MLGPA also teamed with the National Association of State Fire Marshals to co-sponsor the NASFM Pipeline Emergencies Train the Trainer program in Montana. This was the first time industry had ever engaged NASFM to bring the training to the state level. There were more than 50 stakeholders in attendance, which was the highest ever achieved by any state at that time. The MLGPA members also give presentations and staff informational booths at Volunteer Fire Chiefs annual meetings, Montana Career Fire Chiefs Association annual meetings, the Montana Disaster and Emergency Service meetings, as well as offering pipeline training opportunities for responders to participate in pipeline-specific instant command, structure training, tabletop exercises, boom deployments, town hall meetings, and facility tours. Moving on to the excavator and effective public outreach that is performed by the MLGPA, we accomplish it through a substantial amount of supplemental outreach through collaboration with Montana 811 and the Montana Utility Coordinating Council. This outreach includes implementation of funding of a statewide advertising campaign and effectiveness surveys that utilize over $100,000 a year to promote the call before you dig message, improving prevention of pipeline accidents. Members of the MLGPA also help staff Montana 811 excavator meetings, allowing an average of 1,200 excavators to meet face-to-face with pipeline operators every year. MLGPA members also assist Montana 811 in staffing egg safety days and expos, home improvement shows, minor league baseball games, and the University of Montana and Montana State Cat Grizz games. And MLGPA members have also installed tank signs that promote the call before you dig message in high visibility areas such as Billings, Glendive, Logan, Missoula, Helena, and Cut Bank, as well as billboard signs across the state. In conclusion, I'd like to share that the success of the MLGPA has been built on the foundation established through collaborative efforts and extensive face-to-face outreach with all of the stakeholders across Montana. The members of the MLGPA consider collaborative organizations to be the cornerstone of our success. The extensive level of stakeholder engagement in Montana proves that it is effective to allow operators the flexibility to implement common sense local strategies to address federal requirements, and that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to public awareness. Thank you for inviting me to testify today and provide information on the commitment of the MLGPA. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Slider, and thank you to all our panel for your testimony. Since we are from Nebraska and Montana, Senator Daines and I agreed that we're going to be a little more informal in our questioning than we usually are with a Senate hearing. So we're going to see how that works. But we think it'll be great. So I'm going to begin with a few questions, Senator Daines, then we'll have a little back and forth, and I hope the panel is willing to go with us on this as well. First, I'd like to begin with you, Administrator. I know that you've just been in the position a few months. How's it going?
Well, thank you very much. It's going well.
Good. Are we seeing any major changes to the agency? Are you looking at some different changes with the organization? So I know that's a very strong suit that you have.
Thank you. We are. I've been in the position now for just over a month. Officially was confirmed on August the 5th. Again, thank you. And we have had an aggressive kickoff here. Coming in, I was able to bring some new leadership members to the team, and we've started an aggressive assessment of the organization. One of the things that we're going to be launching here in the next couple of weeks is an organizational assessment of the entire agency to look for potential efficiencies. How are we structured? Congress has been incredibly generous in its funding to help us increase our inspector workload moving forward, and we're doing all we can to hire into those positions. The appropriations that came through last year were very helpful in that regard. But moving forward, what we want to make sure is that we're taking those resources and we're actually not only distributing them well across the nation where they need to be, but also making sure that all of our programs and our operations are working as efficiently as possible, and that we're structured to not only handle the growth that has been given to us, but then move forward to make sure that we're addressing future energy needs of this country, because clearly our energy markets are changing and we need to make sure that we can address them.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're moving forward in meeting the congressional mandates from 2011 and what specific challenges you may be facing there?
We have had a good number of mandates that were outlined in the 2011 Act. And we have worked through about 26 of the 42 existing mandates that include rulemakings, reports to Congress, et cetera. I will tell you that with the notice that we received this morning from the Office of Management and Budget, a number of those existing requirements that were outlined in a couple of those existing requirements that were outlined in the 2011 Act, we hope to address through this rulemaking on hazardous liquids. It's one of the two major rulemakings that we've been working on, and it's been something that's been a key priority of mine since coming on board, was to try and move these through our regulatory process. So I look forward to actual publication of the rule so that we can share it with our stakeholders and engage in a very good dialogue. We want to bring transparency. We want to communicate what those rulemakings are, and then get some good dialogue so that we can move to final issuance of some rules here and complete the mandates.
And as you look at that agency action plan, what specific initiatives have you been considering?
Well, as I mentioned, the ASAP, the Agency Safety Action Plan, is something that I've started with the Secretary of Transportation. He's very much focused on looking at all of the modes of transportation, make sure that we're taking a good critical eye on leveraging our existing capabilities and the authorities that we presently have. So we've started that. The first part of our assessment is our enforcement regime. We hope in the next month or two here, we're going to start to see some preliminary results.
What direction do you think you're headed in on specifics?
What we're trying to do is make sure that as we look at all of the enforcement capabilities, for instance, this is one area, all of the enforcement capabilities that we have, we go from a corrective action order, which is directed at a single operator when they meet a certain imminent hazard threshold, and we're needing to address critical deficiencies. That is a very, very high threshold, and it goes all the way down to, literally fines. So the question is given that range, is there anything more that we can do? Are we doing it well? Where can we make some improvements? Are there additional things that we should potentially talk to the Congress about? Those are the areas that we're looking at.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator Daines.
Thanks, Chairman Fisher. We have an opportunity to give some feedback to PHMSA and also to get 45 days of assessment, Administrator Dominguez, of what you think as well, building on what Chairman Fisher asked. So whether you want to do as a stop, start, continue kind of feedback around what should PHMSA stop doing, start doing, continue doing, or perhaps 1 to 2 things that PHMSA is doing right, 1 to 2 areas where PHMSA could be improved. Very much just to have that dialogue here today. It's kind of nice to have this open conversation versus having to maybe write letters to an office and go through the bureaucratic channels of DC. Here we have a chance to have an open conversation. And so let's start with, we'll let the administrator go last on that because I know you have your own assessments as well. So a couple things are going well, a couple things that PHMSA should change. Who'd like to start?
I'll take a shot.
All right, Mr. Denton.
So I think on the positive side, PHMSA has very qualified, competent inspectors. And they go after their tasks, they know the regulations, they know the assets, and they do well when they come into our facilities. I think a couple of improvements may be around getting inspection results out sooner. Potentially, it takes months sometimes before we see those. And in the meantime, we may be having another inspection where if we had those results, we could be implementing those improvements. And perhaps some of the hirings that they'll be doing over this next year can help speed that up as well.
Mr. Just could you elaborate in terms of kind of on average what kind of time delay you see from the time of inspection until you see the report where you start taking corrective action? How long is that?
From our side?
Yeah.
Many times it's about a year.
A year?
Right.
From the time the inspection occurs
right.
until you're told the result of the inspection?
Right. Or it can be sooner, it can be later, and it's varied quite a bit over the years.
Yeah.
I will say it's gotten better in recent years.
In the last 45 days, perhaps.
We've seen
right.
improvements already.
You got to claim it. That's right. That's great. That's right. Okay.
So then, second, I would probably say, a little bit of a frustration for us is we'd like to see a little more consistency among the inspectors. There's 5 different regions. We also have 5 different operating regions. We operate in all 5 of PHMSA's regions, so we often see different. They each have different focuses, and so sometimes there's a little bit of inconsistency there. And then I guess third, we'd like to see a move towards performance-based regulations, and I think we'll have an opportunity, and not necessarily regulations, but performance-based inspections. And with the new safety management system,
Mr. What does that mean? I'm not clear what performance-based inspection means.
And I'll tell you, we even do this to ourselves. Internally, we audit ourselves to death, right? So we look at things we call operations excellence, compliance issues, HS&E, health, safety, environmental things like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it becomes a little bit of a check the box. Here's the rule, here's what you need to do, so to check the box. That's fine, we need to be addressing those things, but let's look at what really makes a difference, right? Are there things that maybe we don't necessarily have a rule for that we can make some improvements on? And at the end of the day, industry and PHMSA have the same end goal, right? I mean, we both want to drive towards zero incidents. So I think there's a collaborative effort that we can make there. And as I started to say a minute ago, the biggest piece I think that will
recently that will contribute to that is our recent safety management system recommended practice. You know, that's something that's been in the, say, the refining industry for many years. You're probably familiar with it as a chemical engineer. That hasn't not been in the pipeline industry. And so that just rolled out. It was published in July, and we'll be moving into our implementation phase. And that's much more of a performance-based type standard. So we'd like to get that implemented. I think we'll see some improvements there, and PHMSA can use that as part of, you know, those improvements as well.
You're gonna get the last word, Administrator. So you're gonna get the last. You bet, great. But no, you're gonna get to close here. So we'll just kind of go down the line in between either Commissioner Oslin or Ms. Slater.
Yeah, Madam Chairman and Senator Daines, thank you for the question. You know, quite honestly, I think consistent application of the rules to everyone is very, very important. We need to know that wherever you are in the same level playing field. And we spend a lot of time and a lot of focus with our operators on pipeline safety around the 811 call system. And it appears that you're much more likely to see a spill, even though it won't likely be the magnitude of a river spill. You're much more likely to find a problem with the result of construction equipment than anything else. And so a focus on more training for the 811 system, more education, I think would be extremely important and very helpful, and reduce the amount of accidents that we do have, downtime and spills and contamination.
Thanks, Commissioner. Ms. Slater.
I would like to offer up that PHMSA does an outstanding job of assisting pipeline operators in engaging the stakeholders from a public awareness perspective. They have CATS coordinators, community assistants, and technical specialists, basically, that help engage when we need them to help drive process improvements. For example, in the state of Montana, we're currently trying to revise the one-call damage prevention law in the state, and the CATS coordinator from PHMSA has been heavily engaged throughout that process. And I think that, again, it speaks to that collaborative approach even between the regulators and the pipeline operators to trying to do what's right. So I'd like to definitely, you know, commend them on that effort, because it is a commitment to provide those resources to us. One area that I would like to see them continue to focus some emphasis on is you know, sometimes we get wrapped up in the statistics of what we're doing, and it kind of comes back to Mr. Denton's comment about the actual performance of it. When we look at what the MLGPA does in this state, our biggest measure of effectiveness is not a statistic. It's not how many did we outreach to. It's not numbers. It's how engaged are they in the process, and are they coming back and reaching out to us for additional information. So that's how we gauge our success, is are the DES coordinators coming to us and developing pipeline response annexes? Are fire departments wanting more information, wanting to come into our facilities and learn more about what they need to do to be effective when it comes to pipeline emergency response? And so to me, that's the piece that I would like to see, you know, is that we focus more on like you said, the bigger performance of the program, not just statistics.
Great, thank you. Administrator.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate all the witnesses' statements and comments and insights. I first and foremost want to talk about, you mentioned inspection results. I'm hoping that the resources that have been provided to us are going to greatly assist us in our capability of turning around our inspection results to our operators in a more efficient manner and hopefully more in a timely way. We have been in need of those resources to actually help assist doing that. Can I ask a question? Is there a goal or a standard set in terms of we should try to get it within 90 days or 30 days? Is there some kind of standard in PHMSA of the time of inspection until we get the report back to the operator? I'm sure there is. I don't know directly if there, I'm sure there's a performance metric associated with it. If not, I will be asking those questions immediately after this hearing. But I think that there should be, and I think that one of the opportunities that we have moving forward is actually to make sure that we are leveraging these new inspectors as they come on board and helping, as part of their training, understand the importance of conveying those of our inspection results back to the operators, because it does further foster that culture of safety. I think that The other thing that I had a chance yesterday here in Montana to meet with a number of, in fact, everyone here on the panel, some members of Mr. Osterland's conservation districts from the Yellowstone River as well, but had a chance to sit down with Phillips and had a chance to sit down with Ms. Slider and some of her colleagues, and really understand the context in which they're operating. One of the things that I was able to talk to in particular with all three is about this larger safety management system. And how do we actually go to a more performance-based set of criteria that we can all work from? And PHMSA has been headed in that direction in a number of ways. We, as the regulator, as you know, set the minimum standard for what operators need to meet. And we expect that they go above that in their integrity management systems and all of the information that they put into those systems. So the ability to actually be more performance oriented is inherent in the regulatory framework that we operate off of. That said, moving forward, the industry has taken a leadership role, and I greatly appreciate it, and I'm challenging them in an even greater direction on safety management systems and the safety management culture, and then building off of the standard that they've introduced under API 1173. It's a great framework for truly integrating a number of aspects of performance-based operation. It's really a continuous improvement cycle, and it's something that we at PHMSA are also looking at doing for our own internal regulatory processes as well. But it is it's a big challenge. It's a number of industries, as you may know, already engaged in it. A number of departments within the Department of Transportation, such as the aviation industry, are already in an SMS culture. I think there's opportunity moving forward to do that in the pipeline culture as well.
Great. Thanks, Administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Chairman
you, Senator
Fisher.
Daines. Mr. Commissioner, could you talk a little bit about the experience you had in addressing that 2011 spill in the Yellowstone, and what you learned from that, and how you had to then deal with the spill in 2015?
Chairwoman Fisher and Senator Daines, I would be glad to. That was quite an experience in 2011, and of course one of the first things that you hear about at the local level is how bad the federal government is and how poorly they operate. And I can tell you from experience that that was not the case at all. In fact, the federal regulators that come in along with the state DEQ worked extremely effectively with the local community, and they provided all fact-based analysis to the public during the public meetings and hearings, and they talked about whether or not there were carcinogens in the oil and the vapor and all the questions that were asked by the public that were exposed to the spill. I actually thought the process was kind of refreshing. It's never good to have a disaster, but after the disaster occurred, it was incredible to see the team work so effectively together. Exxon just did, I thought, a bang-up job. They brought all of the people that they needed and all the resources in, and we talked to very few people along the way that were not completely happy and satisfied with the way the spill was being dealt with. And if you fly or drive or boat down the river right now, you'll find no remnants of that spill. They bent over backwards to clean up. I quite honestly think that that was one of the most effective responses that I've seen to a natural disaster, and was quite impressed with everyone.
Good to hear. How have PHMSA grants helped Montana? Have they assisted in public safety in any way? Are you aware of the grant situation?
You know, I'm not aware of any grant applications that we've had directly, so.
Anybody else on the panel aware of that? Ms. Slider?
They do have a damage prevention grant that the Montana Utility Coordinating Council has teamed with Joel Tierney with the Public Service Commission to get the application in for those grants in the past. They have been used for damage prevention outreach. We've hosted utility locator training schools in the state as a result of those grants, and we continue to look for opportunities like that. Right now, the grant opportunities for damage prevention in the state are not available to us because of the need to update our one-call law in the state of Montana. We did apply, and we did not receive funding this year as a result of that. So we are working towards that currently.
When you apply for the grants, I would ask you, do you see a good cooperation with PHMSA on that? Are they aware of concerns that you have at the state and local level?
Yes, they are engaged in the process and have a lot of communication, I believe, with Joel Tierney at the PSC to really evaluate that need and what the basics are and why we're looking to do what it is we're asking to do, yes.
And as you mentioned, the is it the 811 system that you have in place there? What are the efforts of the state and local officials with that regarding that call system? How's that coming along? Because most incidents occur because somebody hits a pipeline.
Yes, there are a significant amount of incidents that are actually caused by third-party damage. We have a very engaged stakeholder audience here in the state of Montana. Through the One Call Law rewrite efforts, we found that most of the stakeholders want to see us get to where we have an improved One Call Law that meets the requirements that PHMSA has set forth, and are very engaged in the process. And I think that, again, the MLGPA's overlap and work through Montana 811 speaks to that as well. All of the utilities in the state of Montana host these face-to-face meetings annually with excavators. We also perform the public awareness outreach that I talked about, as well as outreach to farmers and ranchers specific to damage prevention. So we're doing a lot in the state to try to promote safe excavation practices and the use of One Call, and our numbers and statistics are showing a positive trend.
And I know, Mr. Denton, your company has a very good safety record, but accidents happen. How are you reaching out to local stakeholders?
So I'll add on to the 811 piece. You know, going back, I mentioned the improvement over the last 15 years. And really I attribute that to two big things. One is technology, with the introduction of smart pigging, which took care of a lot of the corrosion type issues. And then the second was a cultural change, which was really the 811 call before you dig. But we're still having some of those incidents, and the number of incidents of those types are small. I believe it's less than 10%, but they have a much more likelihood to be a serious incident because you have someone there that may be digging into your pipeline with potential for a fatality or injury even. So I think, in fact, there are over a third of the serious incidents. So the new damage prevention rule that came out from PHMSA I think is very important. We would like to see additional enforcement in the states. I think, in fact, Montana is one of 4 states that does not necessarily enforce 811 laws. So that is one improvement we'd like to see. In the meantime, as an industry, we spend a lot of time and effort on public awareness. And that's been a big improvement. You know, 10 years ago, it was you would send a postcard to a local landowner, hey, you have a pipeline near you, just be aware of it. We're getting a lot more creative now. We're going to schools, we're contributing money to PTOs if they'll have a session on pipelines in their area. We're going face-to-face to landowners. And then the emergency response piece of it that was mentioned earlier has been a big piece of it. We started an emergency response advisory board about 2 years ago, involving all of the fire. I didn't know there were so many fire associations, but there are. We've got them all in there, getting the word out. We started this online training, free portal, and I believe over 3,500 first responders have signed up for that already. So that's helping get that word out.
And how do you address public concerns about the safety of pipelines, especially when they are crossing rivers, when they're near aquifers?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, I guess, explain to the public your command and control center? I think it's in Oklahoma
Correct.
City, is
Correct.
that correct? Mm-hmm. How can you monitor a pipeline in Montana, and how quickly can you know if an issue arises so that we can make sure that our water's protected?
Right, so two pieces to that. First, with the landowner issues, that is one of our bigger challenges, and a lot of it is education. You know, if we're going in with a new pipeline, it's having town halls, public meetings, talking about our safety record, the monitoring and mitigation measures that we have. Sometimes it may even be, and Montana's a good example where we've done these 100 projects. In many cases, the landowners at first have been in opposition to that, but once we get in front of the county commissioners, have the town hall meetings, explain to them, here's what we're doing, we're going deeper into the river, we're making the pipeline safer, then everyone really gets on board with that. So that's one piece of it. As far as the monitoring, that was really another cultural improvement that came out starting about 2010, 2011. There was an NTSB recommendation. PHMSA put out a control room management rule in 2010 that was a big part of that improvement. A lot of the incidents back in that time frame, you would see a lot of the volume released was not necessarily from the original release, but the control center trying to restart the pipeline. So that's a cultural change in the control center. We call it Think Leak. And in our control center, we tell them if there's any doubt whatsoever, shut the pipeline down. We have instances, for example, where a landowner may be out taking a walk, they smell something and they see our pipeline marker, they call us, we shut it down. And sometimes it may just be a dead animal on the right-of-way, right, or something like that. But we don't take any chances with that. And I'll give you two examples. We had two. One of the things that we wanted to go after following the Marshall release was pipeline ruptures. And so we put out a white paper on that. And then at Phillips, we actually had two pipeline ruptures in 2013. One was an excavator that hit the pipeline, and the other was a landslide. In both cases, our control center saw the pressure changes and everything on the pipeline within a couple of minutes, had the pipeline shut down in 5 minutes and blocked in. And in one case, we had personnel on the pipeline. By the time they called the control center, they already had the line shut down and blocked in. So we see data very quickly. They're trained to respond very quickly, and we've had some success at making those changes.
In your response when it, which I'm happy to hear, it's a quick response, you shut it down, you mentioned the restart and the issues there. Do you have personnel on the ground to look at the pipeline to make sure it's all right if it is visible,
Exactly.
to be able to monitor it, or do you depend completely on the computer's technology
we have a
for it?
pretty robust process now, where and it goes back to an incident that we had several years ago, 10 years ago, where we did the same thing. We restarted a pipeline. So now, if we shut a pipeline down for any reason, we will send local personnel out to confirm. We'll do what we call a stand-up test to confirm the integrity of the pipeline, and then we get approval from the division manager and the control center manager before we'll restart that pipeline.
How often do you have pipelines that are shut down?
We, on average, probably average one a day. I'd say 5 to 10 a week.
And I guess when you look at the risks involved, how serious a risk is it when the pipeline is shut down compared to a dead animal that somebody smells that you said? I mean,
For the most part, if it's
what I'm looking for is the risk involved too
right,
with
and
pipelines.
So a controlled shutdown is very safe. We turn off the pumps because pipelines go up and down.
The reason they're shut down is what I'm looking for.
Right. So so there can be several triggers, right? So we have a lot of data. In fact, we have 40,000 data points coming into our control center from the field. So we have a lot of data, a lot of analysis that goes into that. We have what we call line balancing. So maybe they see a little bit of imbalance in the line. So that will trigger a response. So we'll get people involved and we'll make an analysis. This doesn't look right, shut it down, and then we'll go investigate it. It may be an odor complaint from a landowner. It may be an instantaneous where we see, the data is just obvious that it is. So those are the type of things that prompt those shutdowns.
But how often is it a serious matter that shuts it down?
I would say 99% of the time it's not an issue, right? It's whatever we shut the pipeline down for, there was not a problem. So
so it's a pretty thorough monitoring system.
It is, and in fact, I remember we had a meeting with NTSB Chairwoman Deborah Hersman a couple years ago, and she asked that very question about, okay, your controllers are paid to move the product through the pipeline. And we said, no, they're paid to move the product through the pipeline safely. That's the first priority. And so we never want to have, if there is a spill, we want to take care of it very quickly. So, but it is rare. It's very rare.
Administrator, you've been ready
Sorry,
to jump in.
I just wanted to, the reason I think it's important to understand what Mr. Denton is referring to is because the difference in operation that he's describing by if they identify a potential leak, whether it's a dead animal or any other anomaly that they're noticing in their operations center, their immediate response is to assess it and shut the line down, as opposed to taking the time to identify somebody to go out, look. There's time involved in a physical inspection versus shutting it down, then going to inspect. And so in the rare instance that there is, in that 1% out of your 99%, what I took away from our discussion is that there's more prevention built in. There's more risk reduced. The risk is reduced as a result of actually shutting it off and shutting the pipeline off and understanding what the harm might be, and then going back to a safe restart versus potentially literally containing. Yes, thank you.
And my last question on this area, people are concerned about pipelines. How do they compare with moving hazardous material by rail or by truck?
So from our perspective, it is the safest way to move hazardous liquids, and just the sheer quantity that we move in the United States. I mean, just our pipeline company alone, we deliver over 2 million barrels per day to multiple destinations all throughout the United States. So for the quantity that we move, pipelines is generally the safest way.
Administrator, do you have numbers on that?
I don't have numbers on it. I know that our responsibility at PHMSA is to make sure, our mission literally is to make sure that there's the safe transportation of all hazardous materials regardless of mode. So as you know, we work both with rail, freight, highway, and pipeline to make sure that every mode that we're working with is as safe as possible.
And how do pipelines compare?
Pipelines are very safe. We're doing everything that we can for every mode of transportation to make sure that they're as safe as possible, regardless of the mode.
Okay, thank you very much.
We believe rail is a safe way as well. In fact, we do move some crude oil by rail, and we need both.
Thank you. Senator Daines.
Thank you, Chairman Fisher. I just wanted to zero in on a Montana question, and I was looking at your testimony, Administrator, about the major river crossings where we have pipelines. And if I'm reading the information correctly, since 2011, we've gone from 24 HDD crossings, the horizontal directional drilling crossings, to now 41. So there's been 17 since 2011. Of the 64 major river crossings, I guess we define major as 100 feet or more. So there's 23 across our state that still would not be HDD. My question is, how should we think about that? What's the plan? What kind of risk does that present right now for our bigger rivers?
So after the 2011 incident, there was a report that we participated in with the governor of Montana. There was a task force that was put together and really looked at assessing all of the river crossings throughout the state. The majority of those that we identified as the most significant risk have been HDD drilled. Moving forward, there's still additional work that we're doing in terms of assessing and monitoring, but we believe the majority of them, with the exception, all of them have been HDD drilled except the one here in Billings, which was determined by all parties involved that because of the stable environment of the Yellowstone in this particular area, the riprap and other measures that had been taken, that HDD probably wasn't the best way moving forward to move product, but nonetheless, the risk has been reduced in that
we
particular
saw that
area.
in the video example of that. Just for everybody who's watching, how deep, when we go do an HDD crossing, how deep are we below the riverbed?
I'm going to turn that over to my colleague.
Typically, we go 40 feet below the riverbed, but it also depends on the potential scour. And scour. Also, it depends on we have some land movement issues in Montana. There are instances where we've gone 200 feet deep to get under potential slip plains that exist out in the hills. So it really depends on every situation, and it also depends on the conditions, the soil, the rock, what kind of things you're running into.
Is there something built into the inspection methodology that relates to when you have a major runoff event? I think every Montanan knew from the winter of 2010, when you saw the Yellowstone, the spring of 2011, I distinctly remember crossing Yellowstone there at Springdale. My wife and I got out of our pickup, and we saw these huge cottonwoods come rushing down the Yellowstone, the forces of water. They were doing tremendous changes in what's going on there at the riverbed. Is that built in? That seems like a pretty common sense thing. When that kind of event happens, that'll raise a lot of alarms if we don't have an HDD crossing.
We actually have built in our inspection criteria literally GIS data that we are working that we collect with along with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Geological Survey. It's part of our inspection routine as we go out through the course of our inspections and look to see how we can, and what we're doing is looking to see how we can further enhance the data that we do collect to make sure that we're knowing everything we can about river crossings.
And are there any other of these major river crossings that are not HDD? How many are planned to be converted to HDD in the next couple of years? Do we have any sense for that in Montana? There's 23 remaining if I'm doing my math properly.
So I don't know the exact number. Like I said, we've got 100 projects that we identified that we need to do.
Yeah.
We're probably about 80% through with that. Some of the remaining ones are HDD. Some will be traditional cut-ins and lowerings. But I will say, back to your comment about assessing the risk, that's really in the PHMSA regulations already. We're required to assess those risks and those threats and respond to those, including river crossings. So the burden is on us to do those assessments. The 2011 flooding obviously pointed that out, that we need to do more.
Right.
And so today we're kicking off that strategic initiative where we think we can put a lot more specific guidance out there. Because today it's really more focused on new construction. But there's a lot of existing pipelines that we need to make sure we're assessing and mitigating those risks.
And I guess my engineer and me, I couldn't resist. We mentioned smart pigging. Maybe give us the quick 30 seconds. What is that doing to help us reduce the risk of a spill?
So again, that really...
It doesn't involve pork production, I don't think.
No. It's also called inline inspection, but it's basically a small computer that you put through a pipeline. And there are several different types. So we look for deformations, so we call those dent tools, where someone may have dented your pipeline and it could be a risk for failure. There's what's called magnetic flux tools. It's basically magnetizes the pipe, looks for metal loss on the pipe. There are crack tools, looking for tiny, small cracks that might not show up on a different type of tool. We have positional tools that we can run to see if the pipeline's moving from land movement, things like that. So there's a lot of different tools. And back to some of the comments early about the 7-year requirement. In liquids pipelines, it's 5 years. So we're required to reassess every 5 years. And depending on the situation, we may do it every 3 years, depending on the risks for that pipeline. So, but the smart pigging, the inline inspection tools have been a huge benefit. And they're getting better and better every year. And that's another piece of our strategic improvement is more research and development on improving those tools.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daines. This will probably be my last questions unless you stir me on here. The talk about inspections, and it's 7 years or 5 years or 3 years, and we have the pigs going in and all sorts of things, I think with technology that can be available. So I'd like to ask all of you, what do you see advancements in technology doing for this business and for the inspections? But also, how do you evaluate risk? Is it location of pipelines, depth, materials used when they were built, the age of them? How do you make those risks assessments? And then I would ask the administrator if the inspection timeline is going to be adjusted for high-risk pipelines as you move forward in the future. So however you want to start on that.
I'll start with the risk piece of it. So every operator has a risk management program, and it's essentially divided into two parts. So the threats, what are the threats to the pipeline, and then what are the consequences? And you combine those two together, and that's your risk. So we have, in our risk management program, multiple categories. We have like 9 different threat categories. So it may be third-party damage, maybe corrosion, it may be manufacturing defects, construction quality, things like that. And then there's multiple subcategories under each of those. So we assess thousands of segments based on those threats, and then we look at the consequences. And so just taking river crossings as an example, so like the consequences, we'll look at population impact, drinking water impact, ecological impact, as well as waterway impact.
And if I can interrupt you,
Sure.
as you're looking at all the impacts here, do you bring in stakeholders? Do you bring in the commissioner? Do you bring in local elected officials? How do you
Sometimes
manage
we
that?
often bring in third-party technical consultants, for example. So
I'm
like,
talking about local people. Do you bring in local people? Commissioner, are you involved in any of this?
Chairwoman Fisher and Senator Daines, thanks for the question. Yes, and the answer is yes. And of course, Mr. Denton not being local, we have regular meetings. In fact, Yellowstone County has a disaster and emergency services director, and along with the refineries and the pipeline companies checking their crossings on a regular basis every year during the flood stages of the river when we have potentials for disaster. Our DES director, along with our Road and Bridge department, spends extra time looking at the river, evaluating all of the spots. Typically, you'll find pipelines near bridges and that, and it is spots where you can find significant erosion, so we monitor those very closely, not only to protect the roads, but to protect the pipelines. I do have regular meetings with all the local refinery executives. I sit on the Exxon Refineries Advisory Board, Community Advisory Board, and meet regularly with the other refineries to talk about mitigation and ways that we can work together to make the system work. So I think the input and the exchange there is very good and very healthy. And with regard to inspection, something that hasn't been mentioned in the process today is that local refineries do hire some private companies around here that do aviation inspections of all the lines across the state. And so there is a regular routine patrol done by aircraft or helicopter that goes around and
Do we use drones yet? You know,
well, I
technology
can't
is-
answer that question yet, but
we're looking at it.
yep. But they go out and look, and they look for spots where you might see oil to the surface of the ground, or you might see excavation near a pipeline or whatever, and they report back. So I think the communication is very good at the local level. Thank you for the
And
question.
The answer is yes. We do include local officials, especially on new projects, things like that. But we do need that input. What are the consequences in your community, right, if we have a spill? And so that is one of the inputs into our model as well.
And I would assume you have plans then in the manner that you contact the community. We just saw river damage in Colorado because, well, I guess that was under the watch of the EPA, and I know local communities, and a lot of the different political subdivisions we're hearing didn't get that information right away. Do you have plans that we can let people know if something is occurring that does have an effect on them, and that they can be contacted?
Absolutely, and we obviously want them to know about that ahead of time, even if something does happen. So, but yes, in fact, we do very large-scale drills every year We had one in Spokane, Washington, a few months ago. And we bring in all of the local responders. We'll bring in EPA, PHMSA will participate. We'll even bring in our peer companies to critique that drill, and then county commissioners, and we'll do a full scale. We'll even have media mock-up, press conferences, things like that. And we'll deploy equipment out on the rivers and right-of-ways, and it's a good opportunity to learn, because every time we do that, we learn something.
Right.
Well, you can add this and do this better.
Right. And so, Administrator, how are you going to bring all this to look at your regulations and deal with high risk?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Before I forget, I want to mention one thing. Speaking of drills really quickly, there's actually a drill that's being conducted here in terms of emergency response. It was done over the last 2 days up in northwest Montana, Flathead region. So I'm looking to see the results of that exercise, but I hope it went well. But it's a coordination amongst all the emergency responders as well as the operators to make sure that we're doing things well. Moving forward, I think that one of the opportunities that we have is to further enhance and further inform our risk modeling system. And as we said, this is an opportunity to make sure that the integrity, one of the things that Congress has been very focused on, and we greatly appreciate it, is making sure that our integrity management system, which really gets at this risk-based modeling, is as informed as it possibly can be. Because what we do, as I said before, is we set the minimum criteria that we hope operators then take and inform their larger risk models that they operate for their systems. Some of our rules that we're engaging in now will further enhance that data collection and further inform it. I also think that we were talking briefly about the facility response plans. One of the things that we're doing is we've reviewed literally every facility response plan that's been filed with the agency over the course of the last 2 years. We're looking to make sure that operators have a current operation plan filed and are executing accordingly in the event that there is an incident. So we want to make sure that those are up to date as possible. It's a constant exercise. It takes a lot of energy and resources, and we're trying to do all we can to make sure that we're as up to date on those response plans as possible.
Great, thank you. Senator Daines.
All right, I think we're getting closer to wrapping up, but I want to direct a question to Commissioner Oslin regarding another pipeline that became quite famous, perhaps infamous, called the Keystone Pipeline. You are a publicly elected official. You're involved in managing Yellowstone County. You see businesses creating jobs. You see them pay taxes. You've got to make all those decisions here as you look at revenues coming in from your tax base and economic growth, or an economic downturn perhaps, and the investments that you ultimately make in our community. How would this impact, how would the Keystone Pipeline impact Yellowstone County, Montana, as you see it? Should we be allowed to construct it and get that project completed?
Senator Daines, thanks for the question. I think the answer to that is pretty easily achievable. We're looking right now at a downturn in oil prices in the Bakken, and of course you can see the economic impact in Billings, the region, in Williston, North Dakota. And across the state, the pipelines and distribution lines pay 13% of the total property tax revenue collected by the state of Montana. If you add in the refineries, and if we were to get the Keystone, you can probably see that percentage over 20%. So 1/5 of the revenue collected by the state of Montana. It would add jobs in a state where they're always important. It would offer us an opportunity to hook onto that line to deliver Montana-made products, which are oil and gas, down to the refineries. I see nothing but benefit from the Keystone Pipeline, but most importantly, it allows us a chance to address our national security. We should have all of our oil and gas available from continents that we support, trust, and believe in, and not be reliant upon OPEC to deliver oil and gas over here. We have the available technology, we have the reserves, we have the ability to build the pipeline. It would benefit our country and our state and our county significantly, and quite honestly, Montana Association of Counties has sent a number of letters to all of the senators, including yourself, supporting the Keystone Pipeline. And 100% of the oil and gas counties in eastern Montana have signed on to that. And we think it would be a valuable resource, and we certainly think it needs to be built.
And from a technology viewpoint, this might be for Mr. Denton, where's the Keystone Pipeline in terms of the technology advances? How would that pipeline be in comparison to other pipelines you see?
So I can't speak completely for TransCanada, but from what I understand, it will be, as are many pipelines constructed today, the best technology. It's better steel, it's better coating. We're doing directional drills under water crossings. You know, that's much more common in new construction. Probably the top leak detection type things. And we are, in fact, we have another initiative that is a construction quality management system that we're working on. TransCanada will be a big part of that and contributing to that effort with lessons learned that they're doing on that pipeline. Many others are building big pipelines as well, and so we hope to have more collaborative efforts like that and take the best practices of all.
Okay, my follow-up, my last question to the administrator. As the administrator of PHMSA, what will you do to facilitate the construction of safe operation of new pipelines? Looking at all the projections, we're going to be building pipelines in this country for many, many years to come. How will you lead to encourage and facilitate the construction of these new pipelines to make sure it's done in a timely manner?
Senator Daines, I really appreciate the question because I think that new construction is terribly important. I think that as we look to, as you know, set our regulations to make sure that there's safe construction and those criteria are actually being met as the pipe is going into the ground. It's a very vulnerable time for a pipeline. The construction, the first few years of operation, it requires a lot of monitoring. It requires a lot of inspection. It is, you know, if you look at pipeline risks and failures, when it's new and it goes into the ground is one of the first opportunities that we have to actually make sure that things are going well. Also on the back end, as it looks to age, there's things that also indicate some harm moving forward. So again, it's a little bit of, you know, on both ends of that bathtub curve opportunity. So with new construction, we're working very hard with advancing our inspection force to make sure that we're able to put enough inspectors out to review the new pipe that's going into the ground and make sure that it's being done well and it's following our standards, and then also working with our operators to make sure that they're going above and beyond to make sure that they're understanding any trends that they might be seeing and informing us as well as others about how things are going as they operate.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chairman Fisher.
Thank you, Senator Daines. The hearing record will remain open for 2 weeks, and during this time, senators are asked to submit any questions for the record. Upon receipt, the witnesses are requested to submit their written answer to the committee as soon as possible. I have also received a number of requests to submit public comments for the record, and these can be submitted electronically through the Commerce Committee website within the next 2 weeks. I ask unanimous consent that any comments be entered into the official record without objection. With that, I would like to thank all of you for being here today. I think we have had a very informative and good discussion. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Senator Daines. Great job. Love Montana. We're adjourned.